일단 지금 볼 학술지는 예일 로 저널의 조나단 B. 베이커 and FIONA 스쿼드 모턴의 Antitrust Enforcement Against Platform MFNs. 소리 좀 키워야나. 면 앱스트랙트가 녹음 소리도 키워야 아주 추는구나. 이렇게 하겠다. 이제 abstract antitrust enforcement against anti-competitive platform most favored nations MFN provisions, also termed pricing parity provisions, can help protect competition in online markets. An online platform imposes a platform MFN when it requires that providers using its platform not offer their products or services at a lower price on other platforms. These contextual provisions may be employed by a variety of online platforms offering, for example, hotel and transportation bookings, consumer goods, digital goods, or handmade craft products. They have been the subject of antitrust enforcement in Europe, but have drawn only limited antitrust scrutiny in the United States. Our feature explains why MFNs employed by online platforms can harm competition by keeping prices high and discouraging the entry of new platform rivals through both exclusionary and inclusive mechanisms, notwithstanding the possibility that some MFNs may facilitate investment by limiting customer free riding. We discuss ways by which government enforcers in the United States and private plaintiffs could potentially reach anti-competitive platform MFNs under the Sherman Act, and the litigation challenges such cases present. Introduction. During the past 2 decades, antitrust enforcement against most favored nations (MFN) provisions have grown in the United States and Europe. U.S. government enforcers have brought cases in healthcare, digital goods, and payment systems, while European agencies have launched a series of challenges to MFNs imposed by online platforms. Given that consumers increasingly use online platforms to purchase goods and services, it is important to analyze their competitive issues. In contrast to European challenges to platform MFNs, there have been almost no such government enforcement actions against platform MFNs in the United States. This feature will explain the necessity of U.S. antitrust enforcement against platform MFNs for protecting competition in these important online markets. Many of the online platform MFN provisions, also termed price parity provisions, 동등함. 가격이 동등하다는 거는 담합을 얘기하는 건가? 잠시만. 프로비전 공급이니까 가격을 동일하게 매기는 현상이라고도 볼 수 있고, 이거는 이제 investigated in Europe have been imposed on hotels by leading online travel agents (OTAs) such as Booking.com and Expedia. The challenged provisions typically prevent hotels from offering rooms on other websites at prices below those charged on the OTA. While these provisions likely violate U.S. antitrust laws, they have drawn only limited scrutiny. 너무 큰가? Okay. This feature relies on this setting to illustrate the need for more vigorous antitrust enforcement in this platform context, in which the producer or service provider sets the final retail price. In exchange, the platform charges the producer or service provider a fee for distribution. This fee is often a commission set as a percentage of the final retail price. 이걸 줄 수는 없구나. 그냥 확대를 해야겠다. The arrangement whereby the platform does not take ownership of the good, example, the hotel room, but sells it on behalf of the vendor at a price chosen by the vendor is termed an agency distribution model. Providers commonly offer their products or services on multiple online platforms. For example, a hotel may make rooms available on Booking.com, Expedia, and a hotel's own site. A computer manufacturer may offer its product line through its own site, eBay, and Amazon Marketplace. Online platforms for hotel and transportation bookings, consumer goods, digital goods, and handmade craft products are often similarly organized. A platform MFN requires that providers refrain from offering their products or services at lower prices on other platforms. 여기서 제한하다는 인 것 같은데, 느낌이 그러네. 이제 refrain이 그만두다, 삼가다, 참다, 억누르다, 자제하다. 그래서 제한을 하는 거지. 제한을 한 거고. The platform is thus guaranteed that no other internet distributor will charge a lower final price, not because the focal platform has worked to ensure that it has the lowest cost. 그래서 더 낮게 가격을 부여하지 않게 만든다. 그래서 not because the focal platform has worked to ensure that it has the lowest cost. 그러니까 맥락상 focal의 뜻은 모르겠지만 이제 그것이 진짜 저가 가장 낮은 가격을 형성해서가 아니라 rather because it has contracted for competitors' prices to be no lower. 그러니까 그 경쟁자의 가격을 더 낮게 하지 않도록 계약을 했기 때문에, 한마디로 담합을 했기 때문에 까지. 그걸 중심이 핵심. 라고 볼 수 있겠지. 그래서 platform MFNs are labeled white if they constrain the price on all other platforms, including the provider's own website, if any. In contrast, platform MFNs are considered narrow if they prevent the provider from setting a lower price on its own website, while leaving prices on other platforms unrestricted. Considered narrow, setting a lower price on its own website, leaving prices on other platforms unrestricted. If a platform with an MFN spots a lower price on other platform, it lowers its price to match. In a market in which most platforms employ wide MFNs with most providers will generally need to set an identical price on all platforms. The provider may agree to the MFN because it has few practical alternatives given the online platform's market power, or because the weakened price competition also benefits the provider. The higher profits that result from higher product prices need not all accrue to the platform. They can be divided between the platform and the vendors. Part 1 of our features shows how platform MFN contracts can harm competition and consumers, despite their potential competitive benefits. 전반적으로 그 해를 어떻게 미치는지를 첫 파트에서 보여주겠다. As our economic analysis draws on the economics literature on the effects of MFNs generally and platform MFNs in particular, we conclude that platform MFNs generally harm competition, except in narrow circumstances in which free-riding concerns are especially strong. Part 2 reviews how and why platform MFNs have been treated differently in US and European competition law. Finally, Part 3 argues that US antitrust enforcers should follow the lead of their European colleagues in investigating platform MFNs, before explaining how a case against platform MFNs could be structured to fit within existing US precedents. One, economic of platform MFNs. This part describes the competitive effects on the simple MFN provisions. Before turning to platform MFNs, the central focus of this feature, like platform MFNs, simple MFNs commit sellers not to discount selectively. We begin with simple MFNs because they are familiar from the economics literature and case law and lays analogous competitive issues. Simple MFNs. A simple MFN promises the covered buyer that it will be charged the lowest price offered by the seller. first blush, one might expect this provision to lead to a lower price for the covered buyer. However, as explained throughout the economics literature, there are compelling theoretical reasons to expect equilibrium prices to rise due to the MFN. The empirical evidence supports this prediction. Below, we provide intuitions from this literature. Some anti-competitive problems created by MFNs are collusive. They weaken price competition. The term collusive includes both coordinated conduct and unilateral. 양측 일방적인 이 콜루시브는 공모란 거니까 담합인데, 이 담합은 이제 양측이 합동에 하는 행위랑 이제 일방적으로 강요를 해서 순용해서 진행되는 방식 모두 이제 공모라고 우리가 부른다는 거지. That softens competition, 경쟁을 약화시키는 거. To understand how simple MFNs raise prices, consider the seller's incentives. An MFN creates a strong financial incentive for the seller not to offer low prices because any discount must be offered to all covered buyers. That penalty makes discounts offered to buyers expensive by making it costly for firms to offer their customers selective. And in some cases, confidential discounts. An MFN may reduce those discounts, soften price competition, and lead to higher prices. An MFN can alternatively or additionally facilitate coordination, including tacit collusion, and thus lead to higher prices. Simple MFNs likely facilitated coordination between General Electric and Westinghouse in the sale of electrical equipment and among DuPont and 3 other sources of gasoline additives. Coordination leads to higher prices when firms reach consensus on terms of coordination and prevent cheating, or when firms acting independently but in parallel respond to rivals' less competitive conduct by accommodating it. By competing less aggressively themselves 하는 등의 예시, 그런 상황. 이제 consistent with the theory, the aforementioned MFNs discouraged discounting and stabilized prices in both the electrical equipment and gasoline additive markets. Second, an MFN may create an exclusionary anti-competitive problem. An MFN can raise the cost of current or potential competitors by negotiating lower prices from suppliers of critical inputs. For example, suppose an entrant wishes to gain customers by charging a lower price, perhaps because it has no established brand name or installed base. It can profitably sell at a low price by undertaking selective contracting with suppliers willing to offer a discount in exchange for more volume or other favorable terms. Those suppliers also supply the incumbent 인컴벤은 있는데 잘못했나? 잠깐만, 어딘지 놓쳤다. 잠시만. 쭉 내려와서 그렇구나. 이게 맞구나. 인컴벤트가 제임저 이모가 있네. Suppliers also supply the incumbent. 소리가 안 나지? Incumbent. Also supply the incumbent. However, an MFN imposed by the incumbent would require the supplier to charge the same price to the entrant. This parity undermines the entrant's business model by preventing it from making an attractive offer to customers. The symmetry that MFNs impose on the marketplace thus can prevent new competition that would lower prices. The Department of Justice's cases against Delta Dental and BCBS Michigan focused on this anti-competitive possibility. The MFNs in those cases were imposed on healthcare providers by dominant health insurers. Those contractual provisions made it impossible for entering health insurers to employ selective contracting with healthcare providers to cut the price of the insurance they sold in competition with incumbent insurers. This made entry more difficult for a new rival whose competitive advantage was low prices, and thereby permitted the dominant insurance providers to maintain high prices. Platform MFNs differ from simple MFNs because they are agreements between sellers and platforms about the prices that sellers will charge buyers who purchase through live platforms, not agreements between sellers and buyers about the prices that sellers will charge other buyers. The two types of MFNs, nonetheless, raise similar competitive concerns. For example, suppose that OTAs typically charge hotels a commission rate of 30%. If that rate is the product of coordination among OTAs, one of the OTAs might decide to compete more aggressively, cheat by charging a commission rate of 15% to hotels that agree to offer lower priced rooms. So without coordination, moreover, an entering OTA may charge discounted commissions to hotels that offer rooms at a discounted rate in order to break into the market. Regardless of whether the OTA is cheating or entering, the OTA can profit if it attracts a significant number of travelers seeking discount hotel bookings. Hotels listing through the OTA may also profit. A hotel may earn more per booking after the commission is subtracted, or profit from the increased bookings. A platform MFN imposed by an incumbent OTA could prevent these outbreaks of competition. The MFN would require each hotel making rooms available on the incumbent platform to set the same price on a rivals or entrance platform. This parity may undermine the discount OTA's business model. By preventing it from making attractive offers to hotels, suppliers, and travelers, customers. The MFN may prevent cheating that would undermine OTA coordination and exclude entrants that would reduce super-competitive commission rates adopted by a dominant OTA or achieved by an OTA oligopoly with market power. In anticipation of our later discussion of antitrust enforcement, it is useful to classify the competitive problems created by platform MFNs on two dimensions. First, the mechanism can be collusive or exclusionary, or both. Second, the MFNs can harm competition among platforms or vendors, or both. While our feature is primarily concerned with collusive and exclusionary harms to platform competition, given the growing proliferation and economic significance of internet platforms, we recognize that MFNs can also harm competition among sellers. Platform MFNs with greater scope and duration would be expected to have stronger anti-competitive effects and impose larger penalties on hotels that sell through a discount OTA. As the share of hotels using MFNs increases, the pool of potential providers that can sell at a discount through an entering or cheating OTA decreases. Thus, a discount OTA will be less likely to succeed. Likewise, as the share of total bookings accounted for by incumbent OTAs with MFNs increases, the costlier it becomes for hotels to list rooms at a discounted rate on entering or cheating OTA, or the costlier it becomes for the entering or cheating OTA to compensate the hotel. Thus, incumbent or entering OTAs will be less likely to adopt a discount business model. 약간 경쟁이 잘 된다에 대한 거에서 계속 너무 부족스럽게 되어 있는데, 뭔가 사설이 부족한 이 안에서 구체적으로 이해 시간 추적이 달리는 이건가? Numerically, imagine a $100 hotel room yielding $70 to the hotel after the incumbent's 30% commission is paid. So after the incumbent's 30% commission is 10%를 내고 났어. If the entering OTA lists the room at $90 and charges a 15% commission. 거의 다 15% 했더니 뭐 13.5불이라는 거지. 13.5불을 가져간다. The hotel would earn a net $76.50, making it better off. Even if the hotel earns less per room with the entering OTA. As would be the case with 70% commission, the hotel will earn more if it builds sufficiently more rooms by listing them at discounted prices. 그러면 룸으로 치면은 더 선을 보지만 더 많은 사람들이 들어오기 때문에 결국 돈을 할인된 가격에 원룸 쓰는 상황에서 더 많은 룸을 채울수록 수익이다. 이거는 이제 16에 대한 여기까지에 대한 거고, 그래서 MFN이 요구할 경우에 어떻게 되느냐 하면서 요구하는 건데, 여기서 반독점 그러니까 점목은 과정이기 때문에 피해가 온다. 적인 See Infra Part 2. Some cases may involve exclusion and exclusion. Including firms may need to exclude non-colluding libraries and entrants in order for the collusive arrangement to succeed. In the OT example, a platform and MFN could support coordination among vendors, hotels while discouraging cheating. MFN을 지급해서 이렇게 치팅을 하는 행위를 그러니까 이쪽이 먼저 가격을 깎아버린다던가 이런 행위를 방지를 억제를 하는 힘을 지녔다는 건데 그 힘을 지녔다 그래서 방법이니까 뭔가 좀 MFN was first price on the corporate platform. The first data covered wire to be strictly lowered by a certain percentage that prices on competing platforms sold to competing buyers. These contracts ensure that the covered platform can post a price or has costs that are below those of its rivals. This feature makes it even more difficult to rival platforms to cheat or enter a discount, thereby increasing the anti-competitive potential of the platform MFN. MFN plus requires the price on the is strictly lower. A certain potential that prices on 다른 경쟁 플랫폼보다 조금 더 낮게 결정하도록 그걸 하고 this contract ensure that the covered platform can post the price that are below those is 다른 경쟁보다 더 낮은 가격으로 할 수 있게끔 한다. 그러다가 겨쳐먹기로 더 싸게 분류가 되고 this feature makes it even more difficult for other platforms to cheat. 다른 경쟁 플랫폼의 경우에는 경쟁하기 힘들어지고 더 싸게 막 할인을 해버린다던가 thereby increasing the anti-competitive potential of the platform MFN. 그래서 경쟁을 저하시키는 가능성이 높아진다. 논리적인 인과관계를 설명을 했는데 그래서 지금 내가 약간 답답함을 느끼는 것 같은데 그래서 amongst others 물론 직관적으로 맞겠지만 그걸 꼭 그렇다고 할 수 있을까? 이게 실제로 그런가 실천사라가 있는가 그것에 대하여 potential FNCs. 그래서 although the economic literature indicates that platform MFNs often harm competition, platform MFNs can generate efficiencies under the right circumstances. 그러니까 MFN이 도움이 되는 경우도 있다. 효율성을 가져오는 online platform MFNs in particular have been justified as protecting investment incentives by preventing free riding. free riding을 방지한다는 측면에서 while the balance between harms and efficiency may vary across markets, we are skeptical, 회의적이다, that this justification will routinely prevail. 이런 정당화에 대해서 그래서 suppose for example that a small hotel makes rooms available makes a room available on an OT like Booking.com or Expedia. That relationship benefits the hotel by bringing it to the attention of customers that search for rooms using the OTA, who are likely far more numerous than the customers that the hotel could reach on its own. By making rooms available on the OTA, the hotel can market itself to consumers who prefer to compare features and prices before purchasing, or those who prefer to conduct their search through an OTA. Making use of the OTA, the hotel can market itself to users who prefer to compare features and prices before purchasing. Or those who prefer to conduct this search through an OTA. The hotel likely makes rooms available on other OTAs too, as well as on the hotel's own site. On OTAs, business requires many hotels to list on its site. By providing consumers with the ability to search conveniently across a broad range of hotels and make comparisons, the OTA attracts more customers. This business requires many hotels to list on its site. By providing consumers with the ability to search conveniently across a broad range of hotels and make comparisons to attract more customers. Critically, for our analysis, an OTA makes its money by keeping a share of the revenue of hotel rooms booked through its site. Because hotels pay the OTA only if there is a booking, the OTA has an incentive to design its site and functionality to promote good matches between travelers and hotels. Absent an MFN, a hotel could have good reasons to set a lower price on other OTAs or on the hotel site. The set of consumers that visit the hotel's own site or on alternative OTA, such as an OTA that caters to student travelers, might be more responsive to price or might care less about particular features of the rooms. Furthermore, the alternative distribution channels might have lower costs than the OTA imposing the MFN. For example, another OTA might charge a lower commission. Or the hotel might not have invested in a high functional website, and thus might be able to process a booking at a cost below the OTA's commission. When these different prices exist, some customers may respond by pre-riding. They will search for rooms on an OTA that facilitates searching and comparison among many hotels, but book through the hotel site or a rival OTA that offers a lower price. And the lower price arises because the library has low costs. Example, it charges no commission. The consumer has taken advantage of the costly functionality supplied by one OTA without paying for it. If many hotels and consumers engage in such practices, the efficiency theory goes the OTA would foresee this problem and not invest in producing the desired functionality. The OTA may not find it profitable to invest in expensive set features, even though consumers are willing to pay for them. Such features might include an attractive design or convenient search and comparison tools. If the OTA cuts back on upgrading its interface and features and on marketing its services, it will lose customers. If free riding is important, and therefore quality competition in online travel may be harmed. Full service OTA would come to have less competitive significance over time and would eventually exit. Only no-frills discounters and hotel-only sites would thrive. So, consumers' transaction costs of searching would rise. In theory, an MFN could prevent this outcome. It would allow a full-service OTA to prevent hotel free-riding on the OTA's advertising efforts, thereby allowing the OTA to be compensated for the promotional service it provides. If consumers value full-service OTAs highly, they will be better off as a result. 그러니까 한마디로 그러니까 기능을 이제 OTA가 여러 개가 있다고 하면은 이 OTA가 그러니까 부킹닷컴 같은 OTA가 있는데 이 OTA는 IT에 많은 투자를 해가지고 아주 다양한 기능들을 수행하고 소비자한테 그 방이 뭐 어떤 구조고 어떻게 돼 있고 이런 것들을 다 쉽게 볼 수 있게 기능에 투자를 해서 볼 수 있게 해놨어. 근데 여러 가지 OTA가 서로 경쟁을 하는 체제에서는 원래 시장이 원래는 그렇고 그게 사실은 당연한 건데 이제 MF를 옹호하는 측의 주장에 의하면 그런 이제 자유시장 하에서 이 다른 OTA들이 나름 소비자를 뺏어가는 현상이 있을 수가 있다. 그러니까 이 다른 OTA에선 가격 코미션 그 수수료를 덜 받으니까 가격을 더 낮게 할 수 있어. 그래서 신생 업체가 그런 식으로 커미션을 덜 받아가지고 사람들 공급자들을 끌어모은다는 거죠. 호텔, 이 경우는 부킹닷컴 같은 경우는 호텔이 될 것이고, 그럼 호텔들이 거기로 다 몰리게 되고, 물론 여기도 호텔 방 숙박 위치를 올리긴 하겠지만 중요한 것은 같이 올린다고 하더라도 이 호텔에서 소비자들이 프리라이딩을 한다는 거지. 그러니까 부킹닷컴이 아주 노력을 해가지고 기능을 적용을 해놨다고 하면은 소비자들은 부킹닷컴에 들어와서 일단 정보를 확인해서 이런 점이 좋고 이런 점이 나쁘고 그래서 쭉 확인을 하고 그걸로 다른 사이트 가서 산다는 거야. 한마디로 말하자면은 컴퓨터를 살 때 다나와에서 이게 다 보고 나서 다나와에서도 파는 게 있나? 파는 사이트가 아무튼 다 보고 나서 실제 보면은 다른 데서 하는 그런 느낌인 거지. 그래서 이제 문제는 이게 결국에는 그 MFN 옹호하는 측 입장에서는 이런 행위가 MFN의 그 OTA의 다양한 기능을 투자하고 발전을 추구했던 OTA는 결국은 돈 낭비가 되니까 결국에는 망하게 된다, 수퇴하게 된다. 그래서 수익률을 거의 안 매기고 그만큼 투자를 덜한 그 업체들만 살아남아가지고 결국에는 궁극적으로 소비자들은 안 좋은 정보만 찾을 수 있고 검색하는 비용이 커지게 된다라는 결론인데 여기서 반박을 하겠지. 그래서 however, there are two reasons to question whether free riding would be so substantial as to make full-service OTAs unprofitable and induce their exit. The first is consumer transaction costs. Some consumers will not be willing to identify hotels on one side, the full-service OTA, then find and book them on other sites, no full OTA or hotel site. The cost savings from sticking with a full Service OTA for booking are likely to be greater for frequent OTA users, as they are likely to have billing information stored on this site. Additionally, the cost savings are likely to be higher for consumers planning trips that require booking multiple hotels and flights if the OTA offers those, as well as for consumers that place a high value on their time. Second, the hotels may need the service that the OTA provides, but find it costly to provide those services themselves. If the hotels pay the OTA for its services, consumers that search the OTA but purchase on the hotel site would not free riding. 첫째는 이제 빈번하게 한 사이트에서 사용하는 게 코스트 세이밍이 더 된다. 뭐 결제 정보라던가 이런 것들이 쌓여있기 때문에, 그리고 어디 막 여러 호텔들을 부킹을 하는 것을 요구되는 경우에는 스트리밍이 더 높을 것이다. 특히 시간을 중시하는 소비자에게 있어서는, 그러니까 예를 들어서 네이버 페이 같은 게 편하니까 사람들이 계속 쓰고, 그 안에서 계속 최대한 검색을 해서 폰트도 쌓고 이런 느낌. 그런데 second, the hotels may need the services that the OTA provide. 그러니까 호텔이 OTA가 제공하는 서비스가 필요하겠지만, 근데 생각을 해보면은 OTA 자체가 호텔에게 수수료를 내기 때문에 OTA에서 검색을 해서 호텔에 가는 거는 소비자가 그거는 프리라이딩이 아니다. 이미 호텔이 그 고객에 대한 비용을 내주는 거다. 이런 관점. 그래서 these possible limitations on the cost imposed by free riding, combined with the incentives to increase the prices and the incentives against entry caused by MFNs, make the economic analysis of a platform market critical. The leading theoretical analysis by economists Andre Boyk and Kenneth Coates find that platform MFNs lead to higher platform fees, drive up retail prices, and discourage entry by firms with lower-cost business models. More broadly, when an MFN may create both anti-competitive effects and efficiencies, it is an empirical question whether it would be justified as pro-competitive in any particular industry. A recent study evaluating the banning of narrow MFNs in the German hotel market found that the ban lowered prices but did not alter the supply of hotel rooms. Although hotel sites typically price at a discount to full-service OTAs, a precondition for customer free riding, the full-service OTAs did not appear pressured To cut back on investments, the hotels posted more rooms on OTAs than before, and the full-service OTAs did not change their commission rates. A second study in Italy, France, and Spain also found that prices fell when MFNs were banned in the hotel industry. To similar effect, the platform MFNs adopted by Apple in their in-book distribution contracts with publishers led to substantial increases in e-book prices. These studies confirm our view that platform MFNs often harm competition and thus are appropriate targets for enforcement by U.S. antitrust agencies. 그러니까 약간 가볍게 좀 잡을 수 있을 것 같은데, 이제 루츠는 이제 배달민족 이런 요기요 같은 업체들이 아예 요기요로 지금 넘어가지 않나? 그러면 더 심각하다고 봐야겠지. 아무튼 이게 단체로 가격을 너무 올려버리면은 배달비 이런 거를 네, 그렇게 해서 결국에는 그러니까 이 호텔 우리로 하면 식당 주인들이 손해를 보자. 손해를 보고 소비자도 소액을 보면 손해를 보면 결국에는 이 MFN만 수익을 보는 거죠. 된다. 이거는 대신 논리적으로는 이제 누구나 쉽게 도출해지는 결론이긴 한데 사례가 필요한데 사례가. So antitrust enforcement against platform MFNs. While platform MFNs have been the subject of antitrust enforcement on both sides of the Atlantic, they have generated greater attention in Europe. What explains this difference? This part of its enforcement actions in Europe, Section 2A, and the United States, Section 2B. Section 2.c attributes the Section 2, Part C attributes the difference primarily to divergent norms governing exclusionary conduct. So A, Europe. In Europe, national competitive authorities (NCAs) and the European Union's (EU) enforcement institutions have brought cases against Amazon and travel booking sites. For the most part, European authorities have looked at platform MFNs as potential infringement of Article 101 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, TFEU, or equivalent sections of the national competition laws of member states. Article 101 prohibits agreements that prevent, restrict, or distort competition. Platform MFNs imposed by a dominant firm could also be found to infringe Article 102, which prohibits abuse of a dominant position. In October 2012, the Office of Fair Trading (OFT) in the United Kingdom, now the Competition and Markets Authority (CMA), opened an investigation into the MFNs adopted by Amazon Marketplace. At that time, a business that sold through Amazon was prohibited from selling products at a lower price on any competing website, including the seller's own site. The Bundeskartellamt 독일 회사라 이름이 막 이렇게 했지. 아무튼 이제 Germany's Federal Cartel Office 가 회사가 아니구나. 독일의 연방 카르텔 오피스 opened an investigation contemporaneously. Amazon 보안 대의 아마존 도치를 들어서 DE 들어가나 보다. 그래서 then accounted for 30에서 40% of online commerce in Germany. The Bundeskartellamt found anti-competitive effects in both pricing and entry. 10 months later, Amazon voluntarily removed the pricing parity requirement in Europe, through it retained the pricing in the United States. Thereafter, both the OFT and the Bundeskartellamt closed their investigations. 그러니까 OTA에서 이거를 하는 거는 그러니까 그럴 때 보여도 약간 문제가 있지. 왜냐면은 얘네는 소매상이잖아. 이 소매상이 왜 도매상한테 이거를 요구를 하느냐? 그러니까 그 공급하는 사람이 사실 이 가격 이상으로 팔아달라 라고 요구할 수 있는데, 그거를 이제 독과점 플랫폼 이기 때문에 좀 더 많은 권한이 있기 때문에 우리 식으로 하면 일종의 값을 하고 있는 거라도 볼 수 있다. 왜냐면 사실 마땅히 그래야 할 이유는 없다. 근데 여기 우리 플랫폼에 가입을 하면은 이제 이거를 싸게 다른 곳에보다 무조건 싸게 설정하도록, 그러니까 다른 데에서 이거랑 이것보다 더 비싸게 팔지 못하도록 설정을 하는 거는 여기는 이제 반독점의 형태가 되는 거고. So since 2010, MFN courses used in the online hotel booking sector have been investigated by the NCAs of a number of European nations. The largest OTA in Europe is Booking.com, which has more than a 60% share of the marketplace. In the United Kingdom, OFT found that the combination of MFNs and lethal price maintenance (RPM) limited competition on hotel room rates and impeded entry by new online travel agents. Although its decision was later reversed, this reversal was due primarily to OFT's failure to fully consider the competitive problems that could arise from the remedy it chose. In Germany, around the same time, the Bundeskartellamt opened an investigation into OTAs that resulted in the prohibition of a wide MFN used by a major hotel platform. Independently, the competition authorities in three other European nations, France, Italy, and Sweden, conducted a joint investigation of Booking.com, designed to aid and inform other concerned member states. Their effort was reserved when they accepted the commitment of Booking.com to change its wide MFN to a narrow MFN. Subsequently, Booking.com expanded its commitment to cover the EU, and Expedia followed suit. This did not end the competition concerns throughout Europe. However, the Bundeskartellamt next banned Booking.com's use of a narrow MFN. Not long after, the legislature pronunciation 아니라 the legislatures 이렇게 했나? legislatures of Austria, France, and Italy banned all MFNs, narrow as well as wide, apparently in response to lobbying by local hotel interests. Retrospective studies in some of these jurisdictions provide evidence that consumers benefited when narrow as well as wide hotel MFNs were prohibited. In addition to these cases, the UK's CMA has investigated MFNs in a number of other industries: private motor insurance, mobility scooters, and live auction services. A recent report details the CMA's current policies concerning MFNs. B. The United States. While cases challenging anti-competitive platform MFNs are less common in the United States, they would likely be framed as agreements in restraint of trade in violation of Section 1 of the Sherman Act, or as monopolization or attempts to monopolize in violation of Section 2 of the Sherman Act. A Sherman Act Section 1 case requires proof that the MFN is introduced by agreement, either among rivals or between upstream and downstream firms. An agreement is not required under Section 2. On the other hand, a Sherman Act Section 2 case requires proof that the defendant exercises monopoly power for monopolization or has a dangerous probability of achieving a monopoly for attempt to monopolize. In practice, this requirement generally means that cases are not brought under Section 2 unless the defendant has a high market share. The courts are conversing on a common burden shifting approach to analyzing whether agreements are unreasonable under Section 1 of the Sherman Act and whether a firm with monopoly power has engaged in predatory conduct under Section 2 of the Sherman Act. In both settings, a plaintiff that proffers a prima facie case shifts the burden of production to the defendant. If the defendant satisfies that burden, the plaintiff must satisfy a burden of persuasion accounting for the harms and benefits to competition. In both settings, the analysis may be truncated, allowing condemnation of conduct without full analysis. U.S. courts have contended with the potential anti-competitive effects of MFNs for decades, although largely not in the context of online platforms. Before the 1980s, the major U.S. decisions grappled primarily with the problem of whether to infer an agreement to fix prices when rivals use MFNs unilaterally but in parallel to facilitate coordination. More recent cases have focused on MFNs that facilitate higher prices by both preventing rival discounting and discouraging entry. 쇼먼 액트에 대해서 좀 더 찾아봐야겠다. The recent ebooks litigation presents the primary U.S. example of antitrust enforcement against a platform MFN. The case arose with Apple's introduction of the iBook Store on ebook retailer. At the time of Apple's entry, Amazon was the leading ebook retailer. Amazon employed a wholesale distribution model by which Amazon paid the publishers a wholesale price and set the retail price, charging low prices to customers. Apple did not expect the iBook Store to be profitable with retail prices at the level Amazon charged. A federal district court in New York found that when entering the market, Apple set out to reduce price competition from Amazon by using an MFN. Apple adopted an agency distribution model by which the publishers set the retail price and paid Apple a 30% commissions. Its iBook Store distribution contracts with 5 leading ebook publishers included MFN provisions and price caps for different categories of ebooks, all of which were above the then current Amazon sales prices. 자, 아마존하고 그러니까 애플이 iBook 스토어를 열 때 사례 이때 애플이 들어오면서 매우 부족한 상황이었기 때문에 MFN을 통해서 이제 5개 공급사에게 30%의 수수료와 그 MFN을 실시하고 가격 캡을 요구했다. So under the MFN provisions, if a specific book were offered by Amazon or another ebook retailer at a price that was below the price that the publisher selected for the iBook Store, the publisher was required to reduce the iBook Store's price to match. These discounts would have been costly for publishers if Amazon had continued its discount ebook pricing, so all 5 publishers converted their contracts with Amazon to agency models and raised the retail prices to the price caps. The MFN also helped discourage price cutting once the publishers had obtained pricing authority and increased ebook prices. The district court's opinion clearly and correctly explained the impact of the MFN on price competition, finding in favor of the plaintiffs. The court found that the MFN provisions not only protected Apple by guaranteeing it could match the lowest retail price received on any competitor's ebook store, but also imposed a severe financial penalty upon the publisher defendants if they did not force Amazon and other retailers similarly to change their business models and cede control over ebook pricing to the publishers. Platform MFNs were also the subject of 2 other recent U.S. cases. In American Express, the government challenged MFNs imposed by American Express in its contracts with retailers that accepted the Amex card. The contracts prevented rival cards from charging lower prices card fees to retailers, as rival might seek to increase its share of retail payment transactions. The contracts included non-discrimination provisions tantamount 많은 양 그런 건가? 버금가는 상당하다. 뭐와 마찬가지. Provisions tantamount to MFNs. These provisions prevented the retailers from passing on lower cart fees to shoppers by offering them discounts for using a less expensive labor card. The government argued that competition was harmed because the retailers were discouraged from steering shoppers to American Express's competitors' labor platforms, and thus those competitors were discouraged from cutting fees. The district court agreed, but the Second Circuit held that the district court had not properly defined the relevant market to account for the potential benefit to American Express cardholders. The Second Circuit did not successfully reconcile its holding with the district court's finding that cardholders were injured by the challenged conduct. The court also made analytical errors and distorted the law's burden-shifting framework to favor defendants. Although the appellate opinion suggested that the panel's holding would not apply to platform MFNs, the thrust of the Second Circuit decision was to make challenges to such a practice more difficult. The Supreme Court recently decided to review this decision. Second, private plaintiffs in 2014 challenged price fixing of hotel room rates by OTAs. The district court dismissed the complaint primarily on the ground that the putative class of consumer plaintiffs did not allege sufficient facts from which to infer that the 8 OTA defendants introduced their parallel MFNs by agreement. This disposition meant to the court did not reach the question of whether the MFNs harmed competition. The U.S. engagement with platform MFNs limited to these 3 cases compares unfavorably with European enforcement. C. Cross-Atlantic differences. The platform MFN cases brought by NCAs in Europe and Brazil appeal to be appropriate enforcement actions with sound theoretical and empirical bases. It is hard to explain, on economic grounds, why such cases have not been brought in the U.S. The regions are likely similar across most meaningful dimensions, including use of MFNs by online platforms, the potential for competitive harm, and the likelihood and cost of free riding. For example, high-income travelers seeking a hotel room in another city are as likely to care about price and quality. Example, a good view or a quiet room in both regions, and as likely to rely on online hotel booking platforms. Hotels in both jurisdictions likely value the ability to set different prices in different distribution channels similarly. Finally, new travel platforms do not appear to face drastically different entry conditions between the 2 continents. Nor do differences in legal rules explain the greater European attention to platform MFN cases. In both regions, the competition policy regime prohibits a wide range of anti-competitive practices, whether adopted unilaterally by dominant firms or through agreement. There is no serious argument that platform MFNs are exempt on either side of the Atlantic. Rather, the investment discrepancy 왜 8시야? 아, 저기 잘못됐네, 시기가. 하긴 6시일 수가 없지. 잠시만. discrepancy 차이 is likely due to the relatively greater interest that European enforcers have shown in pursuing anti-competitive exclusionary conduct. The antitrust norms governing exclusions are more contested in the United States than in Europe. And European enforcement against platform MFNs often involves exclusionary conduct. These background differences, which may discourage both private and public cases in the United States, may be exacerbated by the way resources are allocated at U.S. antitrust agencies. The agencies necessarily give priority to merger investigations, which have statutory deadlines over conduct cases. Doing so can slow non-merger investigations when merger fillings spike or when agencies are subject to hiring freezes or budgetary limitations. Part 3. U.S. enforcement challenges. 맞나? 이게 파트 3 맞아? 맞네. 그래서 the potential competitive dangers from platform MFNs call for antitrust scrutiny. This part discusses how U.S. government enforcers and private plaintiffs could potentially reach anti-competitive platform MFNs under the Sherman Act and the litigation challenges presented by such cases. We emphasize the unilateral incentives created by MFNs for incumbent platforms to charge higher prices and the potential entrants not to enter, because we suspect such conduct and its competitive harms will initially prove the most fertile ground for enforcement. Additionally, we focus on harms to platform rather than seller competition, even though the latter could also be a source of competitive harm and consequently an appropriate subject for antitrust scrutiny. We adopt this focus because platforms are growing in economic significance. Moreover, our discussion gives the great gives the greatest attention to harms resulting from anti-competitive exclusion. The adoption of platform MFNs is likely to harm competition through exclusion absent efficiencies, because scale economies in platform operation typically create oligopoly markets that do not perform competitively. Platforms often benefit from strong scale economies in demand network effects, They may also benefit from scale economies in supply. Exclusionary conduct that prevents a new entrant from gaining a toehold is particularly problematic when the market is likely to be concentrated, such that firms are competing more for the market itself than for a share of the market. The setting we analyze have vendors selling goods or services through online platforms. The vendors set the sales price. Sales price for their customers and pay the platform a transaction fee built into the price. The platform in turn requires vendors not to sell for less on other sites or platforms. This platform MFN prevents the vendor from allowing its product to be offered at a lower price on its own website, if any, or on a rival platform. As a result, entrants are excluded, allowing the platform or platforms imposing the MFN to charge supra-competitive prices. This anti-competitive outcome derives from unilateral platform conduct. A. Exclusion of rival platforms or entrants. In the most straightforward platform exclusion case, the platform imposing the MFN on vendors is the dominant online retailer of the product or service. The MFN is thought to protect the platform's market power from erosion by discouraging entrants who would compete on price. The entrant might charge a lower commission to vendors that agree to pass through their savings by lowering the price consumers would pay. With the dominant platform, the Justice Department, state attorneys general, or private plaintiffs could bring a monopolization case, claiming a violation of Section 2 of the Sherman Act. As previously explained, plaintiffs generally prove the monopoly power element of the monopolization offense by showing that the dependent platform has a high market share. Markets in which firms have high fixed costs and network effects, including online platform markets such as OTAs, are often concentrated. Thus, this element is likely to be satisfied in many platform MFN cases. However, this predicate for liability means that Section 2 of the Sherman Act may not capture all exclusionary problems from platform MFNs. Even a platform with a substantially lower share than the threshold for proof of monopoly power, example 30%, may represent enough business to induce sellers to accept and comply with its MFN. Collectively, convert platforms may represent a sufficient share of the market to create anti-competitive effects, even if all individual platforms are relatively small. Accordingly, we also discuss enforcement against platform MFNs that exclude platform rivals under Section 1 of the Sherman Act, which does not require proof of monopoly power. The market shares used to prove monopoly power depend upon the market definition. Shares will be higher, and the Section 2 case will often be stronger if market participants include online sellers but not brick-and-mortar retailers. In the context of hotel bookings, for example, this would mean defining the market as the online sale of hotel reservations through OTAs and websites. The market would exclude bookings made through brick and mortar travel agents or by telephone. Limiting the product market to online sales is generally supported by consumer behavior in the kinds of platforms that we discuss in this feature. To prove monopolization, the plaintiff must also show that the dominant online platform engaged in exclusionary conduct to achieve or maintain its monopoly power. In the MFN context, this is straightforward. A plaintiff would prove its case by showing that the dominant platform prevented a rival or entrant from cutting fees to sellers willing to lower prices for customers. A court could reasonably infer that the platform engaged in exclusionary conduct from the terms of a contract between the platform and the seller if the contract explicitly requires the vendor to provide price parity. The plaintiff may also be able to support its case by identifying platforms that attempted to enter but were stymied by the MFN. Stymied. Stymie. 그거요. 이 방해하는 건데. 방해되다. MFN. If multiple platforms use MFNs but none is dominant, the practice could nonetheless exclude the entry of rival platforms that would compete over price. The sum of the market shares of the covered platforms would need to be sufficiently large to ensure that the MFNs would discourage sellers from marketing their products on the platforms. As previously discussed, it is possible that competition could be harmed even if only a single non-dominant platform acting unilaterally employed MFNs. However, these competitive harms are not easily addressed under Section 2 of the Sherman Act. Absent a dominant platform, an exclusion case would most likely be brought under Section 1. Section 1's agreement requirement should be satisfied so long as the MFNs were included in the vertical contracts between platforms and sellers. Additionally, if the rival platforms colluded or coordinated to exclude entrants, the plaintiff could satisfy the statute agreement requirement by showing that the MFNs were introduced as a product of a horizontal agreement among the platforms. When no platform is dominant, a plaintiff is more likely to succeed in proving competitive harm when the collective share of commerce in the relevant market subject to MFNs is greater. If some platforms adopt MFNs before others, the MFNs might not harm competition until other platforms follow suit, and a critical mass of platforms and hotels are covered. Then a case against the initial platforms would need to challenge their decisions to continue using MFNs after market conditions had changed, not their earlier decisions to introduce those contractual provisions. In a Section 2 monopolization case, the exclusionary conduct element would more likely be evaluated through the application of a burden shifting framework, allowing defendants to prefer a Pro-competitive justification. Section 1 case challenging multiple MFN agreements would be evaluated under the rule of reason, again allowing defendants to provide a justification. However, a horizontal agreement among platforms to institute MFNs could be held illegal under Section 1. Defendants will most likely attempt to cast their MFNs as protecting platform investment incentives by eliminating free riding. A defendant might seek to prove this justification with evidence that before introducing the MFN, it had been considering limiting its investments in platform improvements due to the free riding threat. A plaintiff can limit this argument with empirical evidence, such as studies suggesting that even narrow MFNs are unnecessary to protect investment incentives by OTAs. A plaintiff might further support a rebuttal with evidence that the consumer transaction costs of free riding are high, or that the dominant platform charges a fee sufficient to compensate it for the services it provides to free riders. If the free riding concern is serious and if vendors typically sell through their own website, the evidence may show that a narrow MFN would likely solve the problem. Under such circumstances, a narrow MFN would be a less restrictive alternative to a wide MFN and could be the basis for a settlement or remedy after a defendant is found liable. The evidence might also show that platforms can discourage free riding in a less anti-competitive way by charging a per transaction fee not based on value. A fixed dollar fee rather than a fixed percentage. So long as there is some competitive harm, an MFN could be found exclusionary when a less restrictive alternative exists, without the need to compare harms and benefits. Free riding is not necessarily a better defense in an agreement case involving a market in which no firm is dominant than in a monopolization case against a dominant firm. However, the analysis of the defense may be more complex in the former. On the one hand, consumers would have more choices among platforms, so free riding may be more prevalent. On the other hand, when sellers have more platform choices, the increased competition may lower fees paid to sellers, so consumers may not have as much incentive to free ride. Substitution patterns across platforms and empirical evidence of free riding would be critical for evaluating a free riding justification in a case challenging the use of platform MFNs when no platform is dominant. Coordination among rival platforms. B. 라이벌 플랫폼과 조화를 조화라기보다는 합동으로 행한 경우. So our legal analysis has emphasized the possibility that a dominant platform or one or more competing platforms could harm competition by imposing MFNs that exclude current or potential competitors, but that is not the only possible anti-competitive mechanism. As the economic analysis above indicates, platform MFNs can also harm competition through two coordinated mechanisms. 1. Discouraging cheating on consensus terms among competing platforms. And 2. Inducing parallel accommodating conduct that leads rival platforms to charge higher prices. If the conduct involves an agreement among multiple platforms to introduce MFNs, this conduct could be challenged as a horizontal agreement under Section 1 of the Sherman Act. As discussed above, such an agreement may be illegal per 102. 조항을 말하는 것 같아. However, although agreements among rivals can be inferred from circumstantial evidence, it can be challenging to prove them without direct evidence. 아닌가? 잠시만. Or I see. Direct evidence. Alternatively, evidence of an MFN introduced by political agreement would also satisfy the agreement requirement of Section 1. The case would then most likely to be evaluated under the rule of reason. Conclusion. These features has explained why MFNs employed by online platforms can harm competition by keeping prices high and discouraging entry, notwithstanding the possibility that some MFNs may reduce inefficient free riding. The prevalence of MFN contract terms on online platforms and the steadily growing share of GDP spent on such platforms suggest that greater antitrust enforcement against anti-competitive platform MFNs could have noticeable benefits for productivity and consumer welfare. That conclusion is also consistent with the results of retrospective studies of the consequence of the elimination of MFNs by European OTAs described above. We find that there are no practical impediments and limited legal constraints preventing U.S. enforcement against anti-competitive platform MFNs. This is an important area for enforcement attention because platforms play a significant role in the economy. The economic analysis of their anti-competitive potential is clear and compelling, and the European experience has shown that challenges to such practices can improve consumer welfare. The academic and popular literature today is concerned with high levels of concentration in internet businesses because MFNs can serve as a barrier to entry by lower-cost platforms. These provisions may make online commerce more concentrated than necessary, limiting competition. Antitrust enforcement targeting anti-competitive platform MFNs has the potential to increase entry and price competition and thereby enhance productivity and consumer welfare. 결론적으로 이제 그 유럽 등의 예시들을 보면서 US에도 이거를 적용하지 않을 어떤 타당성이 없음을 확인을 했고, 지금 이제 플랫폼이 이제 경제에서 좀 중요한 역할을 하고 있기 때문에 이거를 지금 MFN을 방지하는 법안 혹은 제재가 가해져야 할 필요성이 있다. 왜냐면 MFN이 이제 자유 경쟁에 혹은 이제 시장 진입에 거대한 장벽이 되고 있기 때문에, 특히 저가로 이제 저가 신생 플랫폼들이 들어오는 데 있어서, 그래서 this provision may make online commerce more concentrated than necessary. 그러니까 꼭 필요한 것보다 좀 오랜 상거리. 그래서 이제 특정 사이트에서만 이제 판매가 된다던가 이렇게 안 되기 때문에, 우리가 시장 촉진을 위해서라도 이거를 제어할 필요가 있다. 그러면 이제 엔트리가 늘어나고 경쟁이 일어나서 전체적으로 생산성과 이제 소비자의 만족이 더 높아질 것이다. 소비자 가치가 소비자가 느끼는 가치가 더 높아질 것이다. 소비자의 부가 더 올라갈 것이다. 는 어떤 잠재적 가능성을 이제 지니고 있다. MF 플랫폼 간의 이제 최의 플랫폼 조항 같은 이제 반경쟁적인 조약에 타겟한 Antitrust enforcement, 이제 반독점법 같은 시행이 그러한 장점들이 있다 라고 결론을 낼 수 있고, 여기서 제 사례로 다뤘던 것 중에서 인상적이었던 것들은 애플하고 아마존의 사례, 그래서 이게 좀 가장 기억에 남고, 그리고 독일의 관세청이라고 해야 되나? 이게 아닌데, 이거는 독일의 부처에서 이제 조사를 들어갔던 거, 그리고 일단은 잘 기억이 나는 건 딱 그 부분 같고, 셜만 액트에 대해서 상세한 관련해서 좀 설명을 전개를 시키는데, 그 부분이 약간 셜만 액트를 잘 모르다 보니까 와닿지 않은 부분인 것 같고, 이 정도 맥락은 이해했는데, 이번에는 제 상술하고 그래서 결론적으로 필요하다. 앞에서 계속 호텔 같은 거 예시를 하면서 설명하고, 그리고 이제 뒤에 오면서는 이제 정말 과점이 있을 때만 이게 문제점이 있느냐, 그게 아니다. 아주 작은 플랫폼들이 단체로 담합을 하고 있는 경우에도 그 영향이 있으며, 그리고 그 처음에 이제 몇몇 기업들이 가입을 안 하고 있을 때는 가격 담합에 합류 안 하고 있을 때는 이제 이 단합을 할수록 일단 이득이 돼서 하게 되다가 이제 전부 결국은 하게 되고, 그것이 시장에 어떤 영향을 미치게 되는데, 그리고 독점하고 반독점을 했을 때 케이스하고, 그렇게 했을 때 정품 프리라이팅을 이제 상장 효과가 있긴 하나, 이제 문제는 소비자가 그런 프리라이팅을 하는 데 있어서 하는 것이 이제 본질적으로는 자신의 돈이 더 나가게 하는 효과일 수가 있다. 왜냐면은 사실은 그런 프리라이팅을 안 하면은 온라인 사이트에서 돈을 덜 지불하고 공급업체들이 들어올 수 있기 때문에 수입료들이 서 가격이 더 쌀 수도 있다는 그런 지점도 물론 언급을 하는데, 궁극적으로는 그러한 MFN의 치명적인 문제점들을 종합적으로 다루고 있다. 정도로 정리를 듣고, 좀 더 이해가 안 가는 부분들은 다시 한번 살펴보고 정리를 해두면 되겠다.